windshield that C. Bailey was kind enough to send us for this demonstration is the one on the left. It's basically the same height as the factory original. The one I have here is in a slight smoked tint color. As you can see, looking through it to the blanket underneath, you could definitely see that it's got a little bit of a hue to it, which I'm kind of excited about. My experiences with this sort of thing is that looking through the windshield, if you have to look down at the road a little bit, seems to give you a little bit more detail and a resistance against glare than the clear ones do. So we can't wait to get it on the bike and check that out. The other thing, which is unfortunately I can't get a good shot at it because of the cloudy day we have here, but in the bright sunshine, if you look across the surface of the Honda windshield, you get like a rainbow effect, a prismatic effect. Probably for the injected molded plastic versus the one-piece polycarbonate that this is. You can see it when you ride the motorcycle, it's not terribly distracting, but the C. Bailey doesn't seem to have that characteristic, which is a kind of a plus. Okay, what I've done now is I just kind of laid the stock Honda windshield over top of the C. Bailey just to give a brief idea of the cut. The front cut here is very much the same. A little different here. The C. Bailey sticks down a little farther. At the widest point, they're about the same. This is the area worried about where they're hitting the mirrors, but it looks pretty close to be the same, so maybe it won't be an issue. Then it widens out here, and as you can see, it's about a full inch easy on each side wider. And maybe it's just because they're laying on top of each other, the height looks a little bit more too, but that just could be because of the arc of the Honda one versus the Bailey, and they're on top of each other, might not be the same. But the sides are definitely slightly wider. Another thing I'd like to add very briefly about the C. Bailey windshield is its finishing is outstanding. The edging of this thing is like a sheet of glass. It's finished off very, very nicely. The clarity is exceptional, and it's just a very, very nicely made windshield. Okay, before we fit the new C. Bailey to the motorcycle, just like to also note that there is a slightly different contour between these two models. The one in the front is the stock Honda one, which has this continuous radius right across the boards. The C. Bailey, as you can see, which is the one in the back, has a contour to the edge, flattens out in the front a little bit, and then hooks once again, contours a little bit at either end. So there is definitely a slight shape difference between the two. Okay, one last thing to note too is, as I mentioned before, the Honda windshield, because it has the advantage of being an injected molded piece of plastic, they kind of conformed the mounting area so that it fits perfectly flush with the mechanism of the motorcycle. So on each side, as you can see, there is a little bit of an area that forms for that. The C. Bailey, on the other hand, is not. It's just, it is what it is, so to speak. So these mounting regions right here, maybe that's what's going on with some folks saying that it doesn't fit well to the brackets, but we'll see in just a second. Okay, we're going to stop right here for just a second. Before we fully install the C. Bailey windshield, two things we'd like to note very quickly is there is a warning sticker regarding the torque specifications for these bolts. You might want to kind of heed to this. Roughly 5 to 8 inch-pounds. If you don't have a torque wrench upon installing this, just make these snug and maybe stop by your Honda dealer, ask if somebody could tighten that down for you. The other thing is, with just these hand snugged, not even using the wrench part of my T-handle, but just using the shaft so it meets with the bracket, I did notice that this side was lifted. The contour of the windshield isn't quite the same as the Honda, and there's about an inch worth of flexing that you have to go through before this would sit on the bracket itself. So maybe there ends up being a little tension on these brackets, but we'll see. In addition, the bolts that are used to hold the windshield on are shoulder bolts. It has this built-in spacer right here. It actually absorbs the distance between the mounting bracket and the top of this piece here. So really, when you tighten it down, ultimately you're tightening this shoulder against the inside bracket, and it's not really clamping down fully on the windshield, which is a good idea so it doesn't crack the windshield. But still, it's probably a good idea not to over tighten. Okay, as we're tightening down the windshield, I do see some bowing and some flexing. You can see it hopefully in the video of the contour of the windshield as these hex bolts start to pull the windshield closer to that bracket. It does look like it's going to hit the mirrors, and also too there seems to be a little bowing or a little tension on the that's mounting when I tighten down these hex bolts as well. Okay, just to be sure that this thing went on very nicely, I lightly tightened in sequence each one of these bolts just till it was just finger snug, and then went around them and just tightened them a little bit according to their specifications. I did see some bowing and some flexing of the windshield against the brackets, so unlike the Honda, which sat nice and flush until the last bolt was at the moment the bolt cracked loose, it was freewheeling, where this thing had a little bit of tension on the last couple turns. So we'll see where we are at this point. Okay, to answer the question, does the edge of the C. Bailey hit the mirror bases with the wind deflector kit installed? The answer is yes, it does. As you could probably see right here, it is firmly resting in contact with the mirror base. So in its full lower position, it does hit the mirrors, and with a little bit of tension as well. We'll show you that in just a second. Okay, we're going to slowly lower the windscreen into position. As you can see, as you start heading toward the lower detent, it contacts right there and still has to go down that much farther. So it does hit substantially. We've gotten permission from C. Bailey to actually take a Dremel tool and reform this edge so it fits properly, and then we'll send this guy back, and then they'll just probably just recad the design.